And get it back to you. This is one of your last chances. Just throw Shmoo balls at Shmoo, so if you want to take advantage of it. Okay. How do I get it to?
There's a button. This button right. This button switches camera piece. Is yours not detecting it?
Todd called and said that he needed a mini display port to VGA and bring it on. Can you do the intro here?
I just lost the screen.
Okay. Then I'll go run this and I'll be back.
Rachel. No projectors detected.
This doesn't say this thing is not working on.
Come here. You see this? I don't know what this is. My computer's broken.
Well, can we disconnect it for now, and then when you get to the demo, then can we connect it?
This thing is just not working at all.
Well, we'll just not do the live demo. But what's wrong with my computer? Can you try and fix this, Rachel?
Yeah,
I guess if I restart, maybe. Yeah, it's like completely buzzkilled.
Sorry about that.
Work and also locks up my computer, so the demo will be from a video. Sorry about that. But I'm going to talk about transparent botnet control for smartphones over SMS. What that really means is a botnet for smartphones, so your Androids, your iPhones, and the user won't know that it's happening. And I'm Georgia, and this is my first talk ever, and I'm really excited. So, has anybody ever sent a text message and lived to regret it? See, this is a problem with turning on your computer again. This happens. I don't know how to shut this stuff down. There we go. Okay. So, anybody? Text message, lived to regret it?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Me too. So, this project actually started out not as trying to make a botnet, but trying to solve that particular problem. So, once I had done that, I realized it would be very easy to extend this into a botnet, which is better for a security con, and you can come do this. So why would you want to have a smartphone botnet in the first place? Well, there's a lot of them. There are 62 million smartphones sold in just Q2 of 2010. It's estimated that there are 2 million IP routable devices in the world right now, and by 2012, there will be 1 billion smartphones. So that's a lot. There's a lot you can take advantage of there. To put that in perspective, in February of 2010, Mariposa botnet was estimated to be between 9 and 11 million. So it's definitely enough smartphones to make a reasonable botnet. It's easy to move over into the smartphone platforms if you've worked in malware on PC in the past. Android is working for Linux, and then iPhone is OS X, and well, Windows Mobile is Windows. And all you really have to do is compile it with an ARM compiler instead of your PC compiler, and it works the same. So it's easy to move into the sphere of smartphones. You don't have to learn a lot of new techniques. And also, the technical specs are not as good as your top-of-the-line desktop. They're about where your desktop was 5 years ago, and there were botnets for desktops then, and they are rapidly improving. So it's definitely feasible to have a smartphone botnet. Now, if I were going to have a smartphone botnet, how would I want to control it? Why wouldn't I just use the regular IP way that's been working all this time? Smartphones have IP, you can get on the internet, they work just like computers, so why wouldn't I want to use that? Well, the main thing is battery management. IP will run down your battery very quickly. A regular NAT keep alive can take out between 3 and 15% of a battery, so think about if it was a botnet check-in where it was checking in even once an hour, you could take down your battery very quickly. And users will notice that. If their phone runs down immediately, they will know something is up, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So the natural conclusion, if our IP functionality runs down our battery too much, what about our GSM? Our GSM functionality does not run down our battery nearly as much, so that's where I moved into. And then once I decided on GSM, there's been GSM malware shown in the past. This past year at DEF CON, the Android rootkit by Spider Labs used a cell phone call to trigger a shell, but I decided on SMS, that's your text messages, because it's fault tolerant. If you're out of service, you're in the metro tunnel, or you forget to plug in your phone, like I did and had dead phones for my demo, it will just queue it and retry. If it's a cell phone call and you're out of service, you'll obviously never get it. So this is a better way to get messages that you need to get, such as botnet instructions, is through SMS. And GSM is difficult for security researchers to monitor when compared with IP. It goes straight to your carriers. If it's IP and it's on your network at your company, then you can turn on your logging on your firewalls and everything, and you can see all this traffic going in and out, but you buy cell phones for your employees, and it's going to go straight to the cell towers, which means you need help from cell phone carriers in order to do any real research in this area if you're going to take down a real botnet. And we just don't have as much time spent developing techniques to deal with this sort of thing. So how does SMS really work? Well, I drew a little picture. Up here at the top, we have the telephony stack. That's your user space. That's what you see, all your pretty graphics with your Androids and your iPhones. That's user space. And then under there, to connect to the modem, there's a serial line, which is the modem driver. It's just like dev, and then the device name. It works very similar to anything you would see on a PC, except it's connecting to the modem, which is a GSM modem. So then when you receive an SMS message, it hits the modem because it comes through over the air, goes up the driver, and comes to the stack, and then renders and hi, how are you, or whatever they said from a phone number. Same way if you send it, you type it in your user space, it sends it down the serial line and hits the modem, and then it goes off into the air. Starts at your sending phone, and then goes to your sending cell towers, so your carriers. And then it goes to something called an SMS center, which is where your carrier processes all these things. And then it will go, after there, it will go to the receiving. If it's a different carrier, it needs to go to their center, and then to their cell towers, and finally receiving phone. Why this is interesting is because it's not enough to prove that you can make a piece of malware work on the receiving phone. That's fun, it helps in the beginning, but as I found out as I was doing this, just because the phone stack will take something and it will work properly, we also have to make everything in the middle take our packets, because if the center throws it out, then it'll never work in the real world anyways. So I actually had some problems with that, so if you're working in this space, be sure and test it at least once where it actually goes over the air, because even some stuff that seems like it really should work sometimes doesn't, and none of this is open source. It's all by the carrier, so you really just have to test it and hope it works. Instead of coming at this from the botnet perspective, I decided on SMS first, so I really looked more into previous work that had been done in SMS rather than in smartphone botnets to begin with, and I found this interesting talk, Black Hat 2009, SMS fuzzing, and they used this to crash smartphones with SMS, so they were able to put in a lot of messages, whereas you wouldn't be able to do that for free otherwise. So what they did is we go back to our stack as it was before, and what they did was they basically put a proxy between the driver and user space, and then they opened a port here, and instead of sending their messages over the air the normal way, they would send the messages in through the port. So user space would think these messages were normal, but the carrier wouldn't know about it. So that way they could fuzz millions of messages into a smartphone without incurring the wrath of the tariff on smartphone messages or anybody's messages really. So I kind of went off this and I said, forget the port. I don't need the port. I'm not trying to hide from the carrier. And I turned the injector, which was really just a proxy that went back and forth. I set up different lines of where things connected and gave it a bunch of functionality and turned it into a bot. So we'll see more on that. But before we do, we're going to look at a little bit of technical stuff. This is basically when your modem receives an SMS message from someone else. This is what it gets. It looks like a bunch of hex. Well, it is a bunch of hex, and this has a header and tells the phone what to do, and it's not encrypted in any way, so it's very easy to make these yourself. I just made my program do it, but the part I'm interested in particularly is the user data. That user data is actually hello, hello in 7-bit GSM. That seems to be what everybody uses in the GSM world for SMS message examples is hello, hello, so why break with tradition? And this is actually where I'm putting my instructions, is in user space, this in the user data. This is where your message, when you receive an SMS from someone, this is basically if you got this message, it would render hello, hello. That's where I'm putting my instructions. I've tried putting it a few other places, have some research on that, but this has been the one that's worked the best so far. It's just straight in user data, because it'll accept anything, because it's just supposed to be text. So how this works, it's broken down in into 4 parts. And the first part, you just receive a message. Since it's proxying the modem and the application layer, it's going to receive every message that comes through. So it'll receive everything, not just SMS, but everything that goes through the GSM modem. And another thing about being transparent, we want the users to get the rest of their traffic in a timely fashion. So if it is an SMS message, it could be a botnet instruction, so we keep working. But if not, we pass it straight up to user space, so they won't notice anything's up. If it's not an SMS message, it won't be bothered by the proxy. And then we decode the user data. We move through the PDU to the user data, and then decode the 7-bit GSM into plain text. As a side note, if any of you teach intro programming classes, doing this algorithm to move through the PDU and do the decoding is actually very similar in terms of the techniques you have to learn with the loops and big O notation and whatnot of regular intro programming projects. So this might be something to look into. Your students might want to play with cell phone PDUs. So it's worth a thought at least. And then now that we have the message, we check for the botnet key, because if it's not related to our botnet, if it's not an instruction, we need people to still be able to get their SMS messages in a timely fashion. People would notice if they weren't getting SMS messages from their friends anymore. So if it is a bot message, we continue the analysis, and it swallows the message. This is where the transparency comes in. If it's related to the botnet, it swallows the message. The user will never see it. It tells the modem it was received. So no one is the wiser that anything is going on here. And of course, if it's not a bot message, like I said, pass straight up to user space. So anything that's not related to everything still works the same, basically. It doesn't hurt any functionality in any way. It doesn't even slow it down. And then now that we have a message that is for the botnet, it will read the functionality request in the message and then perform the functionality. And if, for instance, it hasn't been updated, this particular botnet doesn't know the functionality, it doesn't crash or anything, it just fails silently on that. This is kind of a little different than PC since it's over the air and such, but I did the structure for this with robustness and security in mind. So it's a little bit different. Typically in your IP world, you have the 1 and then the mini, and they all check in with the 1, but working, since I started with the proxy to do this, why not keep doing a proxy? So I came up with a structure that's actually in 3 tiers. Up here at the top is the master bot or bots. So for the master bot, these are handled by the bot herders. They don't actually have to be phones. They can be computers with GSM modems, Google Voice, non-smartphones, old phones. Anything that can send a text message, this will work. You would want to switch these out regularly to avoid detection. This is really easy to do. Prepaid SIMs are not hard to get. They say you have to give your social security number, but I know from a fact, because of this, they didn't ask me for any social security numbers. And there's always kleptomania, go to someone's party and steal their phone. And the master bot is in charge of the botnet structure. There's kind of a debate in the smartphone botnet world about what's the best way to do this. I vote for the master, having a little more work to do, but getting more robustness and secrecy out of it, because if the master bot is controlling the structure, then the other bots in the system do not need to know any phone numbers, because you can think of the phone number as like a public IP address with no security on it, so you don't want those stored somewhere, because then if one bot gets compromised, then you can find a lot of other bots. And the master bot sends the instructions to the sentinel bots. Sentinel bots are our proxy layer. These are several, call them trustworthy long-infected bots. By trustworthy, I mean that they've been in the botnet for a while, they haven't been found out by the user, they've been in long enough that if they were going to be found out, they probably would have already. So I expect that these bots would not be compromised in the time that I'm using them. So I trust them more than the other bots, more than just some bot that showed up yesterday. They receive instructions from the master bot, work as a proxy, and then pass on the instruction set to some slave bots, which the slave bots are right here at the bottom. That's most of your bots in the botnet are going to be your slave bots. They receive instructions from the sentinels. They don't have any direct contact with the masters whatsoever. They will never at any time know the phone number of the master. So if a slave bot is compromised, as it undoubtedly will, if you run a botnet, you're going to lose some. Security researchers are going to find them eventually. Then you just want to protect your master as much as possible. And these are the ones that carry out the functionality of the botnet. Some examples. So we're going to talk more about examples for this, particularly in GSM space, a little later on. But the normal things that botnets do, these can do too, DDoS, spam, etc. One of the main things I'm looking for in a botnet, as anyone would be looking for in a botnet, is robustness. I want it to be hard to take this down. Up against some really good security researchers, I want to have a chance. So what I did for robustness, the masterbot can change its device at will, its platform, its SIM. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be a phone. It can be any phone. So change it out periodically. So if anyone's might be on their way to being on to you, just change it and then it starts all over again. Prepaid phones are difficult to track. Like I said, there's supposed to be laws that say they have to get your social security number so they can track it back to you, but I haven't found that to be the case in my research, just getting these for the demo. I just got prepaid SIMs and they didn't even ask for ID. But so even if it was taken down, it would be hard to track this back. You would have a hard time getting someone in jail for this. There's just not the infrastructure in place to track this. And the masterbot, again, has knowledge of all the active bots. None of the other ones do. There's no need to store any phone numbers in any of the bots. It does make a little extra work for the bot herders, but you get a lot of robustness for it. Any bots compromised, you don't get much out of it. Sentinel bots, again, long-time bots. These do talk directly to the master, so we want to make sure that the master is protected as possible by using bots that we expect are not compromised and will not be compromised anytime soon. And if a sentinel is taken down, somebody gets a new phone and turns it off, or there just get to be so many more slave bots, you get a new exploit comes out and you suddenly get a lot more bots, then you might need some more sentinels. It's really easy to just promote another one that helps with the robustness as well at any given time. If you need to change the structure in any way, just you can do it. It's not hard. And the slave bots, the main thing with the slave bots is, like I said, you will lose some. It'll happen. It's a given that if this is seen in the wild, security researchers will find their way into the game, and the point is to make sure to limit the amount of exposure. So a compromise of a single slave bot will result in finding the identity of a single sentinel, but those also rotate, so basically you would have to figure out what was going on very quickly before you lost all the information you had. Security concerns. Okay, so I was at Reverse Space, and I was showing this off, how cool it was, and it took them 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, to realize that what they could do is, since they had seen my bot keys, which are in plain text for the demo, there was no authentication. They could go to their phone and type in a botnet functionality, send it to the slave, and it would do it. And some of my friends got rather mean text messages, and they looked like they came from me. And of course, no one believed me that someone hijacked my botnet. That just doesn't sound believable. So I realized there would need to be some security in here. So impersonation, that's what happened. Somebody impersonated the bot master very successfully. So I need something in a way that this cannot happen so easily. Cryptographic keys, obviously an answer here, same way as you would see it in the computer world. So we need some way to authenticate the master bot and the sentinel bots, but we can't do it with phone numbers because, again, nobody knows any phone numbers. That would give the game away. So I can't just say the master bot's number is this number. If it comes from this number, it's a correct botnet message because no one knows what the numbers are. So we need some way to authenticate. Also, we need something against replay. Security researcher finds a compromised phone and watches all the traffic going through, replay the messages. Again, since there aren't phone numbers known, it would be kind of hard to figure out where to send it, but you could send it somewhere and then possibly get a reaction. And the bot herder doesn't want that, obviously. SMS does have timestamps, which will help some, but not sufficiently. So you do need sequence number or one-time key. A good place to start with this is the elliptic curve algorithm because of the small key space. And I plan to do more work in this area, but that's really where I'm going with it because there's not really any cryptography on GSM at all, and there hasn't been much work done in the space of smartphones and GSM encryption. So by working on encryption for this particular model, it can be used for good as well, not just evil. So that's where I'm going with it. There are some limitations to this inherent in SMS. I mean, SMS is what, short messaging system. So it is going to be a little bit limited in that there is the possibility of detection from your phone bills. If you don't have unlimited, then you might get a really high bill if a lot of spam is sent out or something. And some carriers will break down the messages, I believe, if you don't have unlimited, but really, who looks at all that anyways? Anyone? Okay, some people do. Yes, so the spouses would see it, but it would be unintelligible, so yeah, I'm not sure what the spouses would think of that exactly. But also, the big thing, short messaging system, user data is limited to 160 characters. So that means your instruction and whatever keys you use must fit in that space. So the better cryptography you use, the less room you have for instructions. And the better keys are going to be with asymmetric algorithms for the same reason you use it in the real world. You just would want to have asymmetric because then it's compromised again. You can't use that key. It wouldn't give you the private key, but that does mean more space for the keys. So there's a little trade-off there. And also an interesting limitation that just brings another thing you have to do if you're going to run something like this. On some smartphone platforms, only the modem knows the phone number. Where that comes in is when a bot is first infected, you would need it to call home somehow to the master and say, hey, I'm a bot now, you can use me. And it can't do that over IP because one IP ping wouldn't be bad, just like check in at a website, hi, but it doesn't know its own number, so it has to be done over GSM. So you would also need a check-in point that is over a GSM functionality. Obviously, you wouldn't want to have it check back to your master bot because that would totally blow all the secrecy. But there would need to be some drop point involved because only the modem knows the phone number. As any malware that you see at these talks, the obvious question is, well, what does this really mean? Can this really happen in the real world? How does it get infected? This is really cool, all your functionality, but is this actually going to happen? Here are a couple of ways of getting it installed. And it's very similar to what you see in the PC world. So for your regular users, that's everybody, jailbroken, non-jailbroken, security aware and unsecurity aware, like download an application. Why not? We all download applications. Everyone tells you to download applications. Buy our phones because they run these apps. Buy our apps because they're cool. So you just get an app and it's got a local root exploit in it, such as the syn page, Linux kernel escalation that was ported to Android and worked pretty well. And it has, of course, been patched, but an interesting thing about the smartphones is since they're updated over the air by the carriers, it can take ages for you to get your updates. It really can. Like, I flash the firmware on all the phones all the time, and then it takes forever for it to update them again. So there's not really a management plan for updates that is security aware at this time. So you download an app, it's got a local root exploit in it, and then you're a bot. An example of something like this wasn't an SMS botnet or anything, but the Twilight Android botnet that was showed at SkyTalks at DEF CON this past year. It was actually on the App Store, and all it said was that it had pictures of the new Twilight movie that hadn't come out, and so no functionality that you really need, I don't think. But still, within hours of being on the App Store, it had hundreds of downloads. So even something that didn't have functionality. And it took advantage of the trust relationship on these smartphones to just pull down new code. It wasn't actually malicious, it was proof of concept, but it proved that this was actually really easy to do and users will download things. So the same way that you see in the PC world, your client-side attacks, they happen, they work. It's the same way. It's particularly bad with phones because our users aren't getting the same amount of user awareness training. Nobody's saying don't download these apps. Everybody's saying do download the apps. From the carriers to the people who make the phones, it's all over everywhere. Download these cool apps. People are getting rich off of selling apps, so they're certainly not going to say be aware of what apps you're downloading. And for your root level users, it can actually get even easier. So people have jailbroken their iPhone. You similarly trick them, have a root level app, be like, well, I need root privileges for this, but it's really cool. So if you download this and install it directly as root, which you can do on your jailbroken phone easily, then you'll get this cool functionality that you want, but what you don't know is that there's actually a bot inside of it. So an example of something like this is when tethering wasn't allowed, the flashlight app. Flashlight, you get the tether, it has to be root, but as long as the tether is still working, why would you think anything is amiss? Anything could be in there, including a bot, and you wouldn't know. And of course, there's always the remote way. If there is a remote root exploit discovered, then one phone can just start attacking another phone, and we've actually seen that in the past. This would, of course, work on rooted and non-rooted phones. Same way with PCs, except it would just be one phone would attack the other. Example of this actually happening in the real world was the IKB worm for iPhone. This was a couple years ago. It took advantage of the bad SSH passwords that were default on every iPhone that was rooted. So this actually does happen in the real world, could happen. But I think probably get more bots with the apps. Client side is the way to go in the PC as well to get a lot of people, especially since there's very little user awareness training in the phone realm. So I'm just going to give a few examples of what you can do with this. For the code I'm releasing, you can just put in whatever you want. Be interested to see if people come up with interesting payloads for this, but these are some examples I'm going to show. My most favorite one is spam. Spam is what people use botnets for a lot anyways, but it's actually interesting. On top of sending, sorry, I'm watching the time, instead of just sending regular email spam, which you can do, it's actually interesting that you can send it over SMS, send SMS spam, because even your free email addresses they have like your Hotmails and your Gmails, they have pretty good spam filtering. I don't get that many spam messages into my inbox, and I get a few in my spam filter, and I don't even check it most times, but it's there, it's coming in. However, with SMS, that's not the case. There is no spam filter. You're going to get everything that comes in. So it's another way to get more bots even. So I send an SMS ad, or I have a bot, I grab its contacts list, and then send spam, like, hey, this link is really cool, check it out, to everybody in their contacts list. They know that person, so they're not going to be wary of it. They're going to click on it immediately, local exploit, boom, you've got another bot. So no filtering. SMS ads, I would say, might be one of the ways to go in the future for malware writers for just this reason. There's really no security in GSM whatsoever, and either we need to change that or it's just going to be a field day of 15 years ago as more and more malware writers move into this realm. Another example, your typical DDoS. Obviously, if you put a smartphone against a server, the smartphone is going to go down. But millions of smartphones versus a server, I say it's on the horizon. You're going to see a takedown that at least was partially perpetrated by a smartphone botnet. Like I said in the beginning, there's just so many of them, and they are getting very powerful. Their connections are getting faster. They can get on Wi-Fi. 4G can stream over Ustream actually pretty well. We did the Fire Talks on it over a cell phone, so if it can stream on Ustream, surely it can DDoS too, right? Of course, loading new functionality. You want to update your bots. You have all these bots. You can't just go say, hi, can I have your phone for a minute, and use Adrian's USB thing. So you just send them a URL on the payload, and they download the module into the known payloads. Think Metasploit. And actually, as I was working on this, I was just reading all the papers that I failed to read when I was just thinking about SMS, just looking over everything that had been done in the past. One of the things I found was there was an interesting paper from a couple years ago where the researchers made a little botnet. This was IP-based, but they used it to degrade the GSM service. So actually to send out a bunch of GSM packets to the point where it would bring down the network or make it work less efficiently. Think about this. This could be really malicious since it can get GPS data. If you're in a disaster, it could slow down disaster recovery a lot if people did something like this as a payload. So what does this actually mean? I just wrote a little sentence. What it means is if the attackers can get the bot installed, and of course that's an if, and I showed you ways this could happen, but it is up to getting the bot installed, then they can remotely control the user's phone. And then there's no indication of a compromise to the user. They see nothing amiss, everything still works, their battery's not running down, and so they have no reason to believe they're compromised. This just goes on in the background. Of course, the mitigation techniques, you can't say, here are all the awful things people can do without giving some way to fix it. What we need, there's been a lot of security put in as smartphones have been around longer and more people have been thinking about this. There have been security concerns put in at the smartphone operating system level, but not the base operating system. For instance, on the Android, when you download an application, it checks what API calls it needs to make and says, I'm going to have access to SMS, phone calls, and if you're downloading a flashlight and it wants access to your SMS and your phone calls, that would be cause for concern. And there has been some work to educate users about this. However, there's none of these checks at the base operating system level, which is where your Linux is and your Mac OS. So this is where a lot of people are going to be working because it gets past all the security measures in the phone whatsoever. I can just go down there and do whatever I want, and there's nothing to stop me. There's really no permissions whatsoever. So I just do whatever, and there's nothing in the way to tell me not to. If you just put a small tripwire down there and said, hey, something's up, users shouldn't even be able to do this, it sends a red flag, it would definitely slow down this sort of attack from happening in the real world. Also, more liability for smartphone applications. Who's really responsible for this? Is it the carriers? Is it the people in the App Store? Is it the people who wrote it? Is it the person who downloaded it? Including your root level ones, because all the phones you can download third-party applications. So who's responsible for this? We definitely need to start a conversation about this. And of course, user awareness is important. Getting users aware the same way we are in the PC world about the dangers on smartphones. your average user, if they get a link in their SMS message, they're not going to think anything of it. They don't even really think of it as a computer, right? It's just a really cool phone. Phones don't do these things, but yes, they do. So we need to work on user awareness in this realm. Then a little parallel research. After I turned in this talk, another paper came out. It was pretty cool, along similar research lines. It's not the same thing. It's a SMS, but it is partially SMS, so that's kind of applied here. It's something, if you want to work in this field, you should check out this paper. But it's part SMS and part peer-to-peer. Helps with the battery management, but still does a lot of it over IP. And the reasoning is in the paper, but a lot of the answers are a little different from what they think is the best. But it's definitely an interesting conversation. And this was iPhone-based, whereas the code I'm releasing today is going to be Android-based. So check that out. All right, we're going to do a demo. And my Elmo doesn't work, so luckily I made a video for the video gods. So let me find it. I had to shut down my computer because, I don't know, my computer did not like the Elmo at all. So I'm going to show a demo of a spam on Android. Yes, I know it didn't close properly because my computer locked up. Come on. There we go. All right, SMS bots demo. Okay, what I've got here is 3 phones. The one that's still lit up is the master right there. That's the slave. And that's just some phone that we have to send it to. It does talk, but it's not very loud, so I'm just going to talk for you. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my master phone and send this message that says bot, and then spam, and then a number, and then the message is spam. Obviously, you would want to change those keys, but for the demo, it's easy to understand. I'm sending those to the slave bot. Obviously, you wouldn't have them in your phone book, but this makes it easier to understand because you don't know the numbers. Actually, I don't know the numbers because they're prepay, so that was really to make it easier for me. So I'm going to send that on if I ever get around to it. Here we go. And just ignore how slow my service is in my house. I don't know why. That's not because of the botnet, because even the ones that aren't infected are that slow. Okay, so I sent a message to the slave, so it should come up in the middle, but it doesn't. It comes up on the end. So the one that is not part of the botnet received a message. And that message is from the slave bot. And it says, hello, hello, like I told it to. So the slave bot received nothing, but the phone that was not part of the botnet received a spam message. I could put my link in there for where to download things. And then just to prove that everything still works normally, I'm just going to send a regular message. See how slow it is? Just send hello. That's not botnet related. Send that to the slave bot. It goes through normally. So that's how I was able to send spam messages completely transparently. The slave has no idea that that message was just sent from their phone, but the end phone all the way over, it thinks it came from the slave and knows nothing about the master. So that's the demo. Thank you, everyone. I'm very glad I made the video. Did I do? No, those were my hands. So those were my bitten nails. But, so I just showed SMS spam payload. The release code, I'm going to put it up right after this. I just have to hit publish. But the release code has the bot without the payloads. It does everything except when it gets to the point where it would do functionality, it just swallows the message if it has the right key and doesn't do anything. I don't want it to be too malicious, because if I put it out like this, probably by tonight it would be happening. So please make your own payloads. Do whatever you want. Contact me. I'm going to have my contact later. And show me if you do anything really cool. I'd love to see it. But usual disclaimers apply. Don't use this for evil. This is for proof of concept purposes. It's for your research so you can see what malware writers could be doing, not to write malware yourself. So please be considerate. Thank you to my mom, because I had to write this in C. It was for Android, the base Linux OS. It's just like Linux, except it doesn't have a lot of the add-ons, so I didn't have my Perl or my Python that I was used to, so I had to write this in C, and I was just putting a string in there, and then I would output it, and I would get this seg fault, and I was like, how? Okay. Going from Java, where they do this memory management stuff for you, malloc really helped with that problem. So thank you to my mother for that. My mother knows C, who knew? Here's my contact information, Georgia@germnoobs.com. Those are zeros and not O's. Long story behind the germ noobs. One of them's over here, but check me out over there. The code's gonna go up right after this. Like I said, I just have to hit publish. If you have it has instructions. If you have any questions for it, give me a call. Well, you don't. Well, you might know my phone number if you looked really carefully. No, actually, they're all prepaid phones for that reason. No, but what was funny was I changed all the numbers, and then in that PDU at the beginning, I had my real phone number in it. So I changed that like yesterday. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a lot of calls. Send me an email if you have any interesting payloads you write or you have any problems with it. I've done some work for iPhone. The problem is I don't have an iPhone. If you have an iPhone and want to work with this on your iPhone, contact me and I'll send you what I have. I can't guarantee that it works, but theoretically it does. I just haven't tested it because it's really similar. The naming concepts are different. So I'm going to put the slides up as well, and then it's also going to be a Shmoo. What does that say, Scott? Yes, it does. Okay. And then I've got the I can't hear you. What is that? Okay, the question was CDMA phones, will this also work for those? And the answer is yes. It's just a different modem. And that's all I've got. Is there any other questions? Let me go back to contact if you want to write it down.
So you talked about security researchers finding it. What are some of the tools that we can use to detect SMS messages being sent from a modem not up to you?
Well, the question was, how could this be detected by a security researcher? The main way to do this would be the same way the bot is made itself. So look at that code, put a proxy. The release code actually has a log function in it where you can just use the same code to see everything that goes through, and you can just look at your logs and see if there's a great discrepancy between what you're seeing and then what's actually hitting the logs, then you know something's up. Another question?
Avoid detection for people noticing excess SMS messages being sent out. Think about possibly using carrier messages, like impersonating carrier messages.
Right, the question was to further avoid detection, particularly with there being a lot of extra messages. Should I use carrier messages? And actually, I had a conversation about this yesterday. That is definitely something I'm going to look into moving into. That definitely is within possibility. So, yes. Any other questions? Right here. The question was, how many messages would the master have to send, and how many would the sentinel have to send? It would be the master would need to send one message for every sentinel, and then the sentinel would need to send one message for every slave under its command, so kind of a 1-to-1 ratio of how many messages need to be sent. Any more questions? What? Oh. If Right, the question is if you have detailed billing, how will it show up on the bill? It will show up as coming from the infected slave bot. It will not come from a master or sentinel. It will be from the end bot. So according to your phone and your carrier, it was actually sent by this phone. It just wasn't sent by the user of the phone. It was sent from the operating system of that phone. So no one would ever be able to tell that it was a bot message as opposed to any other kind. So yes, it just appears like it came from a slave. Any other questions over here?
As far as the slave bots and sentinel bots are concerned, are slave bots always assigned to the same sentinel, or can the master kind of recognize that as well?
The question is, are slave bots always with the same sentinel? But yes, that can be rotated. The master can rotate this at will. You would probably want to. You want to maintain as much secrecy as possible. Yes, Tuna.
So how does the slave determine
The question is, how does the slave determine who the sentinel is? That would be through probably an asymmetric key algorithm. They would, when they receive a message, if it authenticates correctly, then that's a sentinel. So if you were able to compromise the private key, you could become a sentinel or a master, but you would take means to make sure that you don't have your keys compromised. Same way in PC. Right here.
What other channels could you use for sending data back upstream as out-of-band communication as far as IRC or VoIP or quad-band SIGMO for the master?
The question was, what other channels can you use for sending data back besides SMS? Any channel that's possible. You can use IRC, you can use any of your IP functions. You want to be careful about using anything IP-based because of the battery. You don't want to use that too much. You can use any other GSM functionality, phone calls, GPS data, their version of ping. So anything that a phone can do, you can use it for sending information back and forth. It's a lot of it just deals with, you don't want to be detected, and the more work you make the phone do, the faster your battery will run down. Any other questions? There's one over here.
Do you have a sense that weather carriers are doing any monitoring of SMS messages that might allow them to detect this kind of thing?
The question is there any indication that carriers are doing any monitoring of SMS so they might be able to detect this? I have not seen any, but I was speaking to someone yesterday who works in SIM card hacking, and he managed to send so many SMS messages with his SIM card so quickly. I think he said you could send about 100,000 per second before they notice, but then they'll shut you out. So I would think you could probably get away with this. But yes, they obviously are monitoring it to some degree. If 100,000 messages a second does get caught, then someone's watching somewhere. The question is how much, and I don't think a normal spam usage of this would ever get caught. But I would like to see carriers become more aware of this. I hope they're watching. Hi. One right here. Okay, the question is about the websites where you can send SMS messages. That way it's for anonymity, right? Right. Those would also be in scope. The problem would be if your phone wrote to that, it would be over IP, would run down your battery, but that would be a good thing for your master to use. That would definitely be a way to use your master, but those services, if they're legit, probably make you sign up and have logs and things. So hopefully those sites wouldn't be able to be used for this, but yes, probably they could be used for it. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Free beer. Take all the beer. I don't want to take it home with me.